HHDG.
Peace, HHDG. We are on another episode of HHDG Media, the podcast. And on tonight's episode, we have two members who just dropped a dope album called Solving Cases. One being Elder Sensei of the Artifacts.
Peace,
Peace, y'all. And the other being Jake Palumbo.
What up?
How y'all doing tonight?
Hey, doing good, man.
Good. Thanks for having us, man.
Glad to have y'all on here.
No doubt. Thanks for having us.
Definitely. Now, before normally we talk about giving a little background of each other, you know, a lot of people were wondering how the two of y'all linked up. So I know that it was started with the track War with Sadat X and Elder Sensei. So I'm going to let y'all go a little further into that.
Okay. Originally, I was scheduled to go into Jake's studio to do a remix verse for Shabam Sadiq song he had called Graffiti the World. A friend of acquaintance that we both knew, my man Patrick, he told me to go to Jake's studio and gave me the address. I was okay, right around the corner from the train station. So I get in there, we of course, got along quick. I knocked out my verse, and before I left, I was like, let me hear some beats, just because I didn't know he existed at all, and I just do it right here. So we vibed out, and then kind of made an agreement. I was like, let's do some joints. I didn't think album, but I was like, let's work on something else, just for the fact that what he had did for me. So we knocked out another song, and then I did a joint for him for his album, and then in between that, we just kept recording. Now the War song was he agreed to mix me and Sadat's album. So the War joint was the first one, we got into mixing. Mm-hmm. So, as we were doing me and Sadat's album as far as mixing, we just kept doing songs, and then we was like, all right, you might as well keep going and make an album.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty accurate. Like El said, he a lot of my musical relationships have begun with my quote unquote day job. For those that might not be aware, for lack of a better term, my day job is, I'm an engineer. I record, mix, master for a lot of different people, and I've owned and operated my own studio for the last 10 years in New York. But a lot of people, I end up meeting them as an engineer first, and working with them in some capacity, and then it's a much easier bridge after that to play beats for somebody or to try to actually build a musical rapport with. And so, yeah, Ellen came by to do that verse, and Patrick had reached out and said, hey, Elle and Sadat need to get this song mixed. If you can knock that out for us, Elle will do a verse on one of your joints. And then, like Elle said, the first joint kind of really sparked a light bulb of sorts, and we hit it off as people, and he heard a lot of beats that he liked. And, in between working on everything else that we were working on over the past 6 years, every time we had free time to link up on it, we slapped some paint on the canvas for what eventually became Solving Cases.
Right.
Dope. Now, as y'all can hear, you hear a little bit of that southern twang in Jake Palumbo's voice. Now you've been in New York City for what was it, about 15 years now?
It was 15 years in May. Okay. Yeah. I can't shake the accent, no matter how long I'm in Brooklyn. But yeah, I'm born and raised in Tennessee. I was born in Knoxville. I lived in a town called Johnson City for a little while. And, growing up somewhere where I was heavily disconnected from not just the music industry, but just about everything else, it wasn't like out in the sticks. Knoxville's a city of about 250,000 people. But, at the same time, like I was not in New York or any kind of major hub of anything. So where I come from, like if you don't find something to occupy yourself with, you're going to get in trouble pretty quickly. And you know, from a very young age, like even before I knew what hip hop was, like I've always been very obsessive over music. You know, played in school orchestras and like, you know, did the whole nine and learned different instruments and stuff like that. And after I got out of high school, I was doing my thing locally. Like there was a Tennessee version of the Space Lab crew, and we were booking our own shows and pressing up CDs and trying to do the DIY thing. It's just the problem was we were still a couple of years away from the dawn of social media. And like trying to eat off underground hip hop in Johnson City, Tennessee, like circa 2005 was just a really easy way to starve to death. And so, you know, I moved to New York in 2006 for the purpose of, you know, trying to build my name in the music industry. I kind of fell into engineering by accident, not by accident, but I knew that if I learned how to be an engineer, my own productions and my own music would sound better. And then I kind of stumbled across the fact that, hey, I could actually pay my bills and eat off of this while keeping myself linked in with artists. So, I mean, that's a very long story that it was brick by brick across a long time. But yeah, I'm the hillbilly in Brooklyn. Like I moved to New York to try to do the thing. And 15 years later, we're still here. So.
Yeah, that's a testament because it's a lot of people I know live in New York. It's hard to live in New York when you're not from there. So that's you know, good workmanship.
Yeah, definitely. Now tell us about the early drum set. Does that play into your production nowadays?
100%. 100%, because like, God bless my late parents. Like they allowed me to make so much noise in the crib making music. Like they got me, you know, when I was about 12 years old, I got a drum set for Christmas, and I don't know how they put the bread together to make that happen. But we lived in like a little rental house, and I know I had to make their life miserable banging on those drums like all the time. But you know, my dad played guitar a little bit. My brother, actually, my younger brother is actually an excellent guitar player and teacher and has played on some of my stuff before. But I was just allowed and encouraged by my folks to. The other thing, too, was like if I was in the crib making noise with music, then I was not out running around getting in trouble. So, like, it's like they knew where I was and what I was doing. So, you know, God bless both of them. They allowed me to cultivate that, you know. That just kind of carried on. Like from an early age, I became very obsessed with recording. Like I used to link two cassette decks together and try to do a primitive multi-tracking on the left and right channel. Like, so I mean, all that was seeded from a very early age. But it all plays into my production. My parents had a very extensive record collection that was like real wide and varied. And so my first records I sampled from were their records. And then, you know, combining that with like, I like to joke and say that I play 6 instruments poorly. Because like, I'm not great at any of them, but like I can kind of play keys, I can kind of play guitar, and, you know, and all that stuff. So all that melts together to where you got the combination of samples and live instruments. So I got, you know, the one thing I can't complain about in life is that the environment I was raised in. Like I was heavily encouraged to be as creative and out there as I wanted to be, and allowed to make as much noise with it as I wanted to. So
that's dope. That's great, man. Now, El, speaking on early influence and work that you did, tell us about the hand styles.
Okay, so the artifacts logo was done by this guy named Dante. Dante had a clothing line back in the day called Third Rail, and this was amongst all the other clothing lines that was out coming from LA, GAT, but Third Rail was a counter had clothes, but like if you see the Third Rail logo, you'll see the Artifact logo too, and it's kind of weird for me because I had all his shirts, so it didn't register for me until after we saw the artwork. So like me and Tame being graffiti artists through the years, and you see that so much, you tend to mock it as well. So a lot of people think me and Tame did that, but not Dante did it. He did all of the artwork for the first album. Yeah, he did a lot. He did a lot of stuff early where like people wasn't thinking about what he did for us. On the single with the train and stuff. That was like the first use of like good ass Photoshop. Where still to this day, people see that cover and they ask me like, "Yo, this was like the 1 line, 2 lines. How did y'all do?" I'm sorry to disappoint you, but that train is not real.
Not real.
And they be so disappointed because they feel like we did like the late night, couple of nights was out there doing that.
Bombing.
Where I was like, nah, man, it's not real, yo. It's like real. Like, yo, it's not. It's like, yo. I tell them like, get the record and look at the cover again. I tell them look at the windows. They're like, oh, word, I see it. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. But Dante was a very adventurous guy as far as in doing what he did, and to be the first, we in the Ego Trip book as far as like one of the top 10 album covers as far as single covers ever. So that was what he was going for. So we was even stunned, what I'm saying, like just to see the cover itself, because he showed us a version of Snoop Dogg on both sides, and we was like, well, how the hell did you do this? So he just did a big piece on the wall first, took a picture of it, and put it in the computer, and he called Martha Cooper, who did the Subway Art book, the original book, to get the artwork from her, for the background and the train and everything. So for us, that was an honor to have, her be involved in that artwork as well. But that tag is pretty much, who we are, coming up with the name of the group and everything. That logo is like looking at hieroglyphics logo. It's timeless, and that's what you go for.
Yeah, man. I still got my copy.
Word, see? And every time I tell somebody, I was like, yo, it's not real, yo, it's not at all.
That's dope, man.
It served its purpose.
Yeah. And thank you for the merch that you continue to still put out there, because I know it's worldwide that, people still look for artifacts.
Yeah, man. It's like I've been making T-shirts for a long time. Not until like this past 6 years, 5 years that I went like really more than just T-shirts. It was now hats and hoodies and different stuff like that. I have a dream, and in this dream, me and Tame doing the show, and the whole crowd, like everybody got something artifacts on their body, a hat, shirt, whatever. But it's just like a sea of people, because like for so many people that do buy the gear, is somebody from everywhere buying the gear. Like
right.
Just today, I boxed up a train for this guy in Taipei.
Wow.
That was my first customer from out there. So I'm always surprised, who follow you and who actually want something, and they know how much the shipping costs. The shipping is $25, and they know that. But they also know that, I'm probably never going to get there. I won't say never, but in the meantime, if they know they can get something from me and still got my handwriting, and they're getting it from me and not somebody else. So I just want everybody to have some kind of artifact product. It's not just about pushing the brand. It's really about just still putting focus on the brand for people to not forget what me and Tame contributed to the game. I'm never the dude to feel like, oh, we did this, we did that. I'm like, no, we did what we did. Now we add on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's never me feeling like any kind of way about, I've been in this game almost 30 years, so I'm happy about that. So I'm still able to make records with my man Jake and the next square right next to me right there. So it's all good. Ain't nothing wrong.
Definitely. That's dope, man. Now, one of the dope things I like about when you send out merch is you put your own signature up on there.
Oh yeah.
And I've shared that a few times. That's one of the beauties of not just putting the merch out there, but you got that signature. That's timeless right there. What you're doing
Right, and it's personal.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, no matter how many. I remember the first day I asked the lady at the post office, I was like, yo, is it cool if I write on the box, you know, on the page? She's like, do what you want to do. As long as you put the right address on there, it's going to go wherever it's going to go. I was like, oh, word? I'm in the post office blacking out. Like, all right, bet. So, and, you know, I never saw nobody else doing that. So I felt like, cause like I will say, like on Etsy and on Alibaba, you know, I've seen artifact shirts on these sites. And this was like a few years ago. And I got on Twitter, I got on Instagram, Facebook, and I screenshot, you know, the shirts and, you know, the site and everything. And I told people, like, yo, if you buy shirts from here, any of those sites like that, that's not original product. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's the thing about that, like you said, if anybody got any artifact clothing on, it came from me. You know what I'm saying? And they'll have the package. Some people frame the package. Or keep it. Like, I know one guy, he ordered so much stuff from me. He got it in his corner of the room. He just leaves all the stuff there, but he got it kind of neatly put there where every time he ordered from me, he put it all, and he said, I ain't throwing none of this away. So that's a thing for him along with the merch. So yeah, but I do that for a reason, but it's mostly to like authenticate, you know, what I'm doing. So if you get a shirt from somewhere else, it's not official.
There you go. And speaking on working with the hands, Jake, you actually did some cuts a few years ago for Queen's MC, Rock Mecha.
Mm-hmm. I worked with Rock Mecha for a decade now, actually. Rock Mecha, same thing, started out as a client of the studio, and I engineered his first album, Pirate Radio Star. Now, I actually produced his second album, Iron World, like, all 15 beats on there are mine. Like, and then I produced, on the Ironsides EP, I produced 6 out of 8 songs. And I've got 2 beats on his new project, Rise to Power. So, I mean, Rock Mecha is just a dude that, same thing, like I've worked with in a bunch of different capacities. You know, a good dude. Got a long working relationship with him. But yeah, it's funny because that joint I did scratches on was actually produced by Evil Deed.
Yeah.
You know, you see me on Instagram. I'm in the studio with the beat liners, you know, every couple of weeks. Like, those are my big bros. So yeah, it all comes full circle, man. But no, I've worked with Rock for a long time. And actually, Artifacts jumped on one of the remixes. I produced there's a song on Iron World called Survivor Series, and we did a remix that Ellen Tame jumped on.
Yep.
That's right.
So. Yeah, no, it's all connected.
Yep. Now, being high in demand for your engineering work, do you recall one of your first major artists that you worked with coming out of your Space Lab recordings?
As far as like the first quote unquote credit on my resume, I don't know, maybe Mike Geronimo, maybe Styles P, maybe B.O.B. Like, all that was kind of around the same time. Like, because when I moved to New York, what's that?
I'm looking at him. You got the same reaction I got. Like, you saying these names like they lightweight names.
I was just like, this is a question. It's so bad. Like, I'm always really bad at these questions because people ask me on the radio and stuff like, well, who have you worked with? And it's such a list that, like, I draw a blank and I freeze up like a deer in headlights. So I was having to really think because a lot of that was around the same time period. But yeah, you know, my list of engineering credits is definitely much more lengthy. But, you know, a lot of times, like, that has eventually translated into me doing projects with people or me producing for people. Or even, like, if you look at my solo albums, like the features that are on those albums, like, just about everybody, you know, whether it's Smith & Wesson, whether it's, you know, Sadat, whether it's, you know, whoever, like, those are all people that I had a studio relationship with previously, you know, and just got cool with. And like I said, that's always an easier bridge. And I've always focused, like, throughout my engineering career, like, I've never bum rush people at the beginning. Like I've always focused on just doing my job, get the work done, make sure that their needs as an artist are met. And then once we've developed a rapport, then I'll throw it out there. Like I always tell the story about how, like, you know, Tony Touch was one of my clients for a year before I even told him I did music. You know, I just like I play chess like that. Like, let me just build a rapport. I'm a cool guy. Like I do the work, and you know, and then when I have a record out, it's much easier to get that played. You know what I'm saying? If I need a record played, and I'm just using him as an example because he's family, but a lot of things happen like that. A lot of people, my point is I didn't do that to Tech and Steel. I didn't do that to like just about everybody I work with. Like I like to build an honest and real rapport and earn people's confidence. And then once I've done that, it's much easier to, you know, to get music done. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
But also to build on what you're saying is like, it's hard to find somebody like Jake, like to record you, you know, like it's hard to, you know, go to a studio where the engineer may not be as fast or quick with the fingers to know what to do, where you're standing in the booth just to go back to start your verse over and, you know, they're a little slow with it. You know, with Jake, you can tell he's been around hip hop like most of his life to understand.
Right.
And being that he understands what he's working with, you know, it's not a pause in the session where it's like when you're in that booth, it's hot. You mentally trying to get your stuff right. So you can really be in there for a minute. You can be in there quick, but at least you know the person that's out there is like this while you're in there, because like a lot of cats get frustrated when they ready to jump right back into the verse, so because they so, you know, eager to get it done, and whether they messing up, where they eager to get it over with because they feel like they can get it right. But it's very hard to find a studio or a person in a studio. Like sometimes with certain studios, they have an engineer that everybody might want to work with. That might be the guy that I'm talking about that works as fast as that and efficient at the same time. So, you know, that's why it's like good to have engineer. When you're doing music with him, he's already the engineer of everything anyway. So that's kind of like an advantage, you know. Whereas, like, you're not going out. When we did our record, we knew we didn't have to go outside of him to go do anything, mastering or mixing. So you saving money and you still being efficient at the same time, and you're keeping it in house. You're not leashing it out to people where they, yo, look what these dudes were doing. Like, I'm working with them. It's like, no, it's all in with us. Nobody gets to hear nothing leaked out or nothing like that. So it's a lot of advantage to, you know, working with Jake or having access to him as an
engineer. Yeah. It's definitely important to have that the right engineer for your work, because the sound, the final product with the sound is one of the most important things. You don't want people to come back talking about, oh, the vocals were off on this, you know, the bass was too loud on this, you know, and having, like you said, everything's in house.
Right. And
you're right.
He mixed the XL album, even when he mixed the Artifacts album, you know, that, like, you know, for me is dope, because you want to be there in the session. It's not about you telling somebody what to do, but that is, I tell everybody in recording, that's the best process when you see mixing go down, because from all the demos you did when you recorded just the vocals, that ain't shit compared to when you start listening and sitting in the session where you get all the stuff changing and it gets so clean. And when I let my friends hear it after we leave, they like, damn, I remember how they sound when y'all was just doing the vocals. Like, now it sounds like, yeah, like say it magic, you know, because, you know, that's why I told Buck, I said, let Jake do it. You know what I'm saying? He knew what he doing. And, you know, then Buck found out, like, hey, I think I probably should keep working with him, because he saw what he was doing while we were in the studio. Everything was fast. He left out of that room like, oh, your man is like, yeah, I'm probably have to call him. I was like, yeah, you do. You know what I'm saying? It's because he hop around different studios as well, trying to find that person that'll understand what you want, like verbally. And once even if you're not there, because it's not all the time you're gonna be at the studio, you want to at least trust this man to know that when I'm not there, you know what to do.
Yep, definitely. Now, it's a question for both of you, being that you both MC. For L, did graffiti writing come first or MCing?
Graffiti writing came first because I was already doing artwork, drawing as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I latched onto it immediately. I was never able to go out and do walls or nothing like that. My father wasn't trying to hear it, but I always kept it on paper. He was not. Like, we went to the Bronx Zoo. Got off the train. I'm like, wow. He's like, yo, can we leave? I'm looking at the train go by. I'm just like, cool, okay, I see this on TV. Got outside though, and I just remember the Bronx being like a war zone. I was like, yo, what? I was like, this is New York. I mean, but this is the Bronx, man. It was like zombie land. I mean, like buildings was destroyed, but we got walking through. I still saw what I was attracted to. Yeah. And we got home, and right after seeing all that, I get home. I'm like maybe like 11, 12 years old, and we get home and I'm watching Star Wars come on Channel 13. Like just randomly came on. I'm like, I see all this New York stuff going on. I see DJ, I see Flash. I'm like, what is this? So my father watching me watch that, and he looking at me like, you think you gonna be out there writing on the walls too, like them dudes do it? And I'm like, you know, at the time, of course I said no because I was still learning on what it really was, you know. So to see that movie mixed in with being because I was a b-boy first, you know, and drawing. But when I saw graffiti, I was like, oh man, I want to do that, you know, in some kind of way. So like b-boying was first, then graffiti, and I didn't get into rhyming until like I was 14. And this was transitioning out of being a b-boy because after doing that, it wasn't really too much dance-wise happening until it got into we was able to go to a club and, you know, dancing on the floor became dancing like you see dudes in videos, you know, like, or being at a party. We had our big butt top fade and we, you know, that's what we was doing. And then like I was really getting into the music as far as the people we all name in our top 5. So I grew up with, you know, listening to Kane, listening to KRS, listening to Chuck D, Ultramagnetic, and I immediately caught the bug, and I was like, you know, I started trying to write my own stuff, but of course you're gonna wind up sounding like all the people you listening to. So I pushed myself to try to be a little different and not sound like who I listen to. And that's when you start trying to discover your style and where you want to be at, you know, and not be like these people, but be influenced by them. So all my rhyme part came like later in high school, you know, but that not trying to emulate what I heard, but like I'm listening to these dudes. Like I can't be them, but I could try to do something somehow, some way, until you find what your style is. And that's what happened.
And for you, Jake, was it MCing, DJing, or production?
I would definitely say the production came first. You know, being that I grew up in Tennessee, like I didn't grow up seeing graffiti and breakdancing. You know what I mean? Like I just, you know, it was a different environment, and you know, but having a music obsession from a very early age, you know, I always tell the story like my family didn't have cable until I was like 16 or 17. So the only time I got to see MTV was when I go to my grandma's house. But every time I go to my grandma's house, I would demand that she put MTV on because that was where I could see music. And inevitably watching MTV at her house, I started seeing Yo MTV Raps. And that was my first exposure to hip hop. So I used to cut her grass every week, and I get my little $20 and I would go to Camelot Music in the mall and buy cassette tapes and later CDs. But one day, just on an impulse, and mind you, this is much later, like this is 95, 96 probably, but Public Enemy, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. I bought that album on impulse, you know, several years after it came out, and that just floored me. And when Wu-Tang Clan's Wu-Tang Forever came out, my mom and dad got me that for my birthday. And that ultimately solidified my, like, need to be in hip-hop. So I'm saying that to say that being that I was already tinkering with instruments, I had a drum machine, I had drums, you know, I had a guitar, a bass, a keyboard. Like when I put my head around the fact that like RZA was a one-man band per se that was making these beats, that inspired me to eventually want to make hip hop. And then as time goes on, I just started getting more and more obsessed with hip hop. And then just by proxy, like after I made enough beats, so mind you, these are very crude beats that, you know, it was a very early version of what I'd eventually do later. Just eventually, after you make enough beats and you listen to enough rap songs, you're going to start kicking your own rhymes. Like it's kind of hard not to at some point. And so I just started writing and, you know, met other people around my area, you know, at the time that rapped too. And we would hit open mics together and all that. And, you know, from there, like we were saying, started pressing up CDs and trying to do the whole indie grind. But now, definitely for me, the music side of it came first. And I've just always been like an opinionated person that's got a lot to say about a lot of different things. And, you know, so yeah, the music came first though. But it's hard to do the music and not do the rhyming part too. So
that's dope. Now, for L, being that you came up on the Graffiti, how did it feel to not only do a song with KRS-One, but the song was for the documentary Whole Train?
Yeah, that was that. Now, I remember when that was happening, the guy in Germany that made that movie, and whoever who didn't see this movie, is a German, I won't say documentary, it's a German movie based on these friends that just go bombing. And they, you know, having regular crises in their life where, you know, they trying to decide if they really want to do this. But one dude was just on it like that. He had I think I don't want to get a story away. So y'all go look at this movie called Whole Train. My man Florian did the movie. And actually, KRS-One backed this movie, you know what I'm saying, with his own bread and everything. He brought a guy out to New York to show the movie in SOBs. I was there. You know, I had a song by myself. Tame has a song on the soundtrack, and yeah, dude, like he asked me, did I want to do a hook on the song with KRS? And I'm like, wait, like you want me to do this? You want me to do the hook for the song? He's like, yeah. I'm like, is he cool with that? Like, I think he's cool with it. He's doing the movie with me, so yeah. I'm like, I bet. So like, even though a lot of people don't know that record exists, it's on, of course, it's on YouTube and everything. But for me, that was like, you know, another notch in the belt early, because not just for that, because he gave us a shout out on the MC Act Like They Don't Know song. So, you know, that was just another outreach for me, just to, you know, that he's showing, you know, me and Tame for him. You know, when we did that song, he always give us props for that. You know, just for the fact that, you know, we come from Jersey. He did a review saying it took some dudes from New Jersey to bring light on the subject that started in New York, of something that started in New York. So like to be on that song with him, you know, that was dope for me. You know, I was happy to be on it. You know, there's some things you don't think you'll do in life, you know, and you listen to cats long enough to where when you get inside the game, you never think that something like that will happen. So yeah, I was a happy dude around that time.
Yeah, that's dope, man. And the international community always gives you love. I mean,
yeah.
If you look at your solo career, you've done albums with the Returners.
Right. Yep.
You did a track with Cos.
Yep.
What was the other?
Man, you know.
Chillo.
Yeah, Chillo and Belgium.
Yeah.
And I worked with a lot of producers overseas, and you know, for some reason I gravitate toward that. I got a guy in Denmark, my man Chris 1-2. I worked with the Snow Goons on like damn near every album they've done. You know, so it's my man Tommy T in Norway. the creators in London, DJ Yaz in Japan. You know,
the whole Son of Sam.
Yeah, DJ Yaz, dude, my man in Japan. I did a song with my man Reno, and you know, I still talk to these guys. I still work with them to this day. You know, I feel like it's important to always work with people that's not from home because that will get you out into the world. You know, we get through records all day out here, but you know, it's refreshing to work with cats that's not from here but they're not too far from what we're doing. It's just over there, you know. So like working with the returners, when I was working with them, they were only like 17 and like 18 years old.
Wow.
And was making music sounding like that back then. So like, you know, I appreciated everybody that gave me a chance to work with them because, you know, I was an older guy working with them, but they trusted me to do the record with them. Well, we wound up doing 2 records, an EP and then a full album and a remix album. And then we toured a lot. So like that is important because, like, you know, working in Europe is the same thing as being a jazz artist, being a hip hop artist. Yeah, I don't know why it's like that. You go over there and they love you more. And they give you the opportunity, they give you all the money and treat you in a whole different way out there. And all you hear out here, all the cats that interview me out here, they're like, yo, so like, I heard they be appreciating cats like way more over there. Like, man, you know, that's kind of like an insult. You know, these people love this music just as much as we do at home. And the reason why they bring us out there because, like Jake said, they didn't grow up with hip hop like, you know, what we grew up how I did, and even being from New Jersey. So like these people, when they come to New York to visit and they being a tourist, they think they're gonna see rappers walking around like it's wilderness, like it's habitat, like you're gonna you can go to a show, party, you might see something, but now like soon as you get off the airport, like New York, the mecca of hip hop. No, it don't work like that. You got
that reality, check.
but that's how they feel, like, and this is like how they feel when we go out there. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like festivals. You know, these people come to these festivals, hip hop camp, Alpha Fame, Royal Arena. You know, these people go to these festivals because they know they're gonna see like damn near every rapper they ever grew up listening to in one festival, and sometimes in 2 or 3 days. These people have hip hop camp means hip hop camp. It's like almost like 5 days of people that's camped out, come from every different part of the country, all these different countries, just to be at this place where like 5 stages, 2, 3 hangars, but they know who's coming. So the main stage gonna have, you know, over the years I've been there, you have Pete Rocker, CL Smooth, Redman, EPMD, Bahamadia. You getting every rapper that you gonna dilated people. I mean, you just name it. They all gonna be there. So this doesn't happen in America. So these people book these shows on a regular. So it's something that we should do out here. You know, we had it, but you know, cats get greedy, but out there they do it the right way.
Yep. And for Jake, being that he's now in Brooklyn, all of the artists that he's worked with are not always from, you know, the Tri-State area. One of those being the Arizona MC Wisecracker. Tell us how you linked up with him.
I mixed his album. What was the name of that album? Supreme Paradigm, I think was the name of it. I met him through my man Cypherface is a dude that I've known for over 15 years. Dating back to, you know, the original days of MySpace, like when I would, in the early days of MySpace, I would just be on there networking with people and trying to parlay shows for myself in other places. And so I met Cypherface in, I think, 2006. And he brought me out to Tucson, Arizona for a show. And I ended up making a lot of friends and a lot of contacts in Arizona. And oddly enough, in the United States, like Arizona is one of our best markets for shows, for streaming, for everything. But I'm saying that to say that Cypherface had actually done a verse. Cypherface was a dude I met in Arizona about 15 years ago and ended up getting very cool with. And I produced 3 albums from, you know, he was part of the Space Lab crew, like, you know, the whole 9 yards. But Cypherface did a verse for Wisecracker and just linked me that way, and I ended up mixing the Supreme Paradigm album. I think that was the name of it. Had a bunch of features on there. Actually, Sensei on that album as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly enough. I never actually met him in real life, though. But there's a lot of artists. I can say that about a lot of artists because, you know, as a mixing and mastering engineer, I work with people all over the world. Like, you know, I work with Recognize Ali in Ghana. You know what I mean? Like, I work with, you know, people in Japan. Like, if you can record something wherever you're at, you can send the files to a mix engineer anywhere, you know, and then they can mix it and send it back to you. So I do a lot of remote work like that. You know, it takes a little bit of back and forth with the artist. Usually I got to send the mix. With you not being here in the studio to get kind of instant feedback, you know, I usually got to send the mix, get your notes on it, you know, make the changes, you know, until we got a thumbs up. But there's plenty of artists that I've worked with like that. You know, that we've actually not met in person, but we've exchanged files and things like that. But yeah,
Dope. And you also just recently engineered Meticulous's dope new album, No Caps.
Oh, Meticulous is my man. Meticulous, aside from being a highly underrated producer, if I didn't do my own beats, like he's one of the people that I would get my beats from. But he's a class act as a person, and actually has DJ'd for me live, like on certain show dates where, like, you know, I didn't have a DJ for that night. Meticulous has filled in for me on the turntables a few times. But no, I've mixed I've in the last 3 years I've actually mixed 4 albums for Meticulous. He's done 3 albums with Justo the MC. Well, actually, I'm sorry, 2 are out. 1 we just mixed and is going to be coming out soon. So I mixed 3 albums with Meticulous and Justo, and then Meticulous's producer album that just came out, No Caps. I mixed that also. But no, that's the homie. He was just here last week, actually. The funny story about me and Meticulous is that we used to actually see one another every single day and didn't know it. The last day job that I had before I was in the music industry full time, I had this job at a website that sold digital cameras from 2006 to 2008. And it was in Dumbo, Brooklyn. And I used to eat lunch every day at this little deli. And Meticulous, who worked for Fat Beats, the Fat Beats warehouse is right there in Dumbo on Bridge Street. Actually, me and Elder Sensei just did radio the other night for All Metal Show, like in this exact block we're talking about. But point is that me and Meticulous used to eat lunch in this same spot every single day and never said a word to each other for 2 years. So fast forward to when I've got a studio in Manhattan, the B-Shine ciphers were taping there for a little while and taped several there. And Meticulous hosted one of them, and he goes and introduces himself to me, and I'm like, I know you. Like, this wild sense of deja vu happened. And when we finally determined, like, yo, we used to eat lunch at Bridge Fresh every day across the table from each other and just, like, never said a word. So, yeah, I go back with Meticulous. That's my guy.
That's dope. Now let's get into the new album, Solving Cases. Now, I got a quick question before we get into it about the album. I don't know if this was done on purpose, but the first half of the album has no MCs on it. There's a feature on it by, shout out to Jay Zone on the drums, but there's no features on it. Was that purposely done?
It was a happy accident, as Bob Ross used to call it. It was a happy accident because, like, I'm a firm believer in that album sequencing is a lost art. Like, I really feel like the way an album should be sequenced, it should play kind of like a movie. You know, you should start on a good energy. You should use the middle to kind of get your storytelling and, you know, things like that across, and then you should end on a high note. So as I was sequencing the album, or putting together what I thought was a mock sequence, like, okay, this track order feels good. It just ended up that way. Tracks 1 through 7 were all just L, and then tracks 7 through 14 were, all had features. And so I went to L like, hey, what do you think about doing a side A and side B? To where, it's like for side B, we invited our friends over and he was with it. So,
yeah, because it was like, we didn't, think about it. Like the only song we knew that we wanted to go first was Blast Off.
Yeah.
We knew that was going to set the record off. With anything else that was going to come after that was not set up. So like recording the record, we didn't have even a lineup in our head of, because even the first song we did wound up being a feature song. And we was like, okay, let's build on that. So like when he asked, and I never thought about it as like far as the features go, being on one side, because the way I had it structured in my head, I was doing it through the music, through the beat as being a DJ, the speeds, the different speeds of the record,
right,
and the different moods of the record. So like, honestly, for me, when I make my record, I want the record to come out the gun smoking. At least the first couple of songs before you get to one where it's like, okay, like you got to slow it down just a little bit. And that's what Throw It Out was in between the 3 songs in the beginning. And once we got past a certain point, I knew we was going to probably have to mix in some features, but the music didn't call for that to happen because, like, the majority of the record is fast anyway. So, like, when he came to me with that idea, I was like, you know what? I would rather that because it's hard to, like, put out a record today without a lot of people feeling like they got to have a bunch of features on the record anyway. So a lot of times, a lot of the artists that come out today will wind up putting the feature song as their single. Mm-hmm. And then you trying to depend on this person that's a feature to be on stage with you and go out on the road with you, rather than just put out the record, that you could just have for yourself and put that as your single. And I learned that from being on the label. They was like, yo, whoever y'all get to be on this record, you're putting out your own record first. Like, it just makes more sense. So for us, we knew which ones was going to go and back of each other, even with the singles, with John Robinson. As soon as we recorded that song, we knew that was the second single. Like, all right, slot that in. It was nothing else that was, and both, like I said, the speed of the records catered to each other. So, once he said that, I was like, yeah, man, like, it's really, nobody really doing that anyway. Because, you would think, like, a lot of times people want to use the features as the anchors for their records to sell anyway. So he was like, look, this is me and you in the beginning. And then we, like you said, bring everybody else to the party. It made sense.
That's dope. And you're right. You are the feature, not the guest feature.
Right. And that's what I told me. That's why me and Sadat only had like 2 or 3 guests, and then that was, who else we need? Damn, we got Freddie Fox and AG. Like, like we didn't need too many other, and Nutsos on the album. So that was it. I said, X, me and you doing a record together is the feature in itself. So we don't need like 10,000 artists.
Yep. And the first track made, correct me if I'm wrong, was Last Laugh, and that's like a few years old.
Yeah, it's the oldest song on the record. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the song that, like, okay, when we made Last Laugh, there was no album. Like that the verse L laid on Last Laugh was my payment for mixing his song, and that.
I did the second verse that day, right? I did the second verse that day.
I feel like we did the second verse later.
Okay.
And then Wordsworth got us the verse back pretty quick. But yeah, that was just him. At that time, that was just L doing a verse on a Jake Palumbo beat. And, we'd figure out what it'd be later. So yeah, that was actually the first thing that we started. And if memory serves, Blast Off was the second song.
Second one. Right.
Yeah. And like L said, from the minute we did that, we're like, that's the first single, that's kicking the album off. And I think that got things a little more serious about, locking in to do a full project and
Right.
an EP becoming an album.
Like he said, like most of his relationships through music come to people coming to the studio, and like it took like a minute. I didn't wait. I really just came in there. I heard what I heard. I knocked out what I knocked out, and I just randomly just came out with it. Like, yo, you want to do a record? Like, just do some more. And he looked at me. He was like, almost like, yo, you sure? It's like, yeah, like,
Yeah.
let's make it happen. And that's when he was like, I wouldn't have thought that you came to my studio like twice. You asked me to do a record. And I'm like, why not? Because that's like, for me, is just, work comes like this. And you always got to have a plan in your head. So me sitting with him, the times I came there, it just dawned on me, like, remember, I just like, and like everything I said earlier, I'm looking around. This is his studio. He making these beats. I'm looking at my friends and people I know coming through the studio. And I'm like, damn, it just made sense. Why not? And because I like what I heard. That's why I kept, and I really didn't ask no more to let me hear something. It was pretty much like, yo, send me some beats, and I'll sit down and check them out. And then we just, from the 2 songs we did, we just went on from there.
That's it, man. Now, one of the credits I noticed on the album, it said graphic design and layout was by DJ AV. That's the same DJ AV from Underground Railroad.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And 88 Pop.
Yep.
With Mecha and them back in the day. Yes, sir.
Okay. Dope.
AV is a phenomenal DJ. He was one of the first DJs I ever heard do like triple cuts and like a lot of other things. He's more famous for his mixtapes that he put out. And I still have a bunch of them in my closet. So A is a good guy.
Yeah. Dope, man. Now, with this album name, what was the direction when you came up with the album name?
We was actually trying to figure out what to call the album because we were just making songs. And Jake was like, "Yo, we really got to come up with an album title for this." Like, so we didn't really have too much. But then, from the conversations we were having, it was mostly about like, what can we do collectively as 2 people knowing what's going on right now? What can we do to add to, kind of like change the outcome of some of what's happening and not fall into the same everyday record. And always for me, the mission is like trying to figure out like what's wrong with what's happening that's making people not say like the stuff they used to like and, cater to a certain style more than say, what we were doing. So it became like a theme in our mind, like, if we had to take pictures, that's when we started thinking about crime scene, like, MC dead body, producer dead body, or whatever. But just, it always became like we had to figure out why this MC dude, DJ dude, producer dude died in the process of him trying to do music, or, we trying to figure out what it was. And that's what, like, records back in the day had, even I would say R&B or funk records, whether it's Parliament, Ohio players, you could visually look at these pictures and stare at the record cover, want to look at the credits. So rather than us just posing here and there, we just like, yo, let's really act like get an actual crime scene, like do the chalk, get the badges and the caution tape. We had people pulling over, like people asking, yo, what happened? So like, this is why we were shooting these pictures. So it's like, for everything we could have did, we just said, let's be a little different and at least have some kind of structure to what we're doing and have people guessing on what these pictures mean, because when you listen to the album, it has nothing to do with solving the case. It has nothing to do with police theme, crime. You know what I'm saying? Like, the only crime that's happening when you listen to the record, we just trying to body everything that we doing, whether it be the microphone, the music, all the guests on the record being on there with us. It was just something that we gave the listener to visually look at when you actually listening to the record, and you can appreciate, the time that's that's being put in to put a project and album together as a product to put out for people that may not know I come from Artifacts or may not know who Jake is, you know, but then we're bringing people that know who we are together, you know, for something new. So let's be a little bit unpredictable and what the presentation look like.
That's dope. Now, what made you want to come with the reggae vibe on Watch Out?
Oh man, Jake played the beat. He sent it to me, and I told him, I said, you know what, yo, I think we should do that one. And he was surprised that I said that because, like, out of all of the, you know, I knew I could do it, but I didn't want to sound like I'm trying to sound like I'm trying to be Jamaican. You know, I had a lot of ideas for the song, but I called my man in London, my man Spice, that's on the hook. And because I know him very well, I knew he would fit right in with the song. And because he's you know, from the UK, and his style of chant is different from here in America or in, you know, they come from different regions. So I felt like he could bring a whole nother vibe to it. And yeah, I stepped out the box. You know, I had to put my KRS hat on for all of the songs I heard him do back in the day where I know he's not Jamaican, but he got his feet in the roots of it. You know, and you can hear it, of course you hear it in his music all day. So I said, let me take a page out of his book and try and see how it'll work. I got a lot of my friends, a lot of my Jamaican friends I played it for, and they looked at me like, yo, your mind, you convincing. So Spice, you know, I know he listened to all that, so when he hit me up, he said, yo, I want to be on it. He said, yo, you sound crazy. He said, I didn't think you knew how to do something like this because, you know, I'll be around you. You know, so I said, yeah, but when I'm in London with you, you play it all day. I'm in there bobbing with you. What makes you think, you know, I don't know, something about it. But I just challenged myself and to try to do something different, and it worked. It worked.
Yeah,
I like the result because, you know, like I said, doing stuff like that, you know, sometimes you had to dudes come after you like, oh, you're big Jamaican. So I'm like, no, I'm just trying to press my limit.
There's actually more reggae beats in my catalog than you would think. Like records like Tuffaluppagus, for example, is a dub reggae sample. And in my record digging and like my digging habits, like I've just always found really ill reggae 45s, and I've loved flipping them. And so that was just a beat in the stash, like the L gravitated towards. So
that's dope.
Yeah, it was dope.
Now, one of the unexpected collaborations I seen on there was on the Headbutt special. You had Rusty Jukes with Scam.
Yeah.
I was like, when I first saw, I was like, oh, I wonder how this is gonna sound.
Well, yeah, Scam is my dude, man. Scam is my man.
I did a whole album with Rusty in 2018. We put out Jake and the Jukes Man.
Jukes Man, yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah. That was right before my studio moved from Manhattan to Brooklyn. Jukes was at my studio at that time. There was a period of about 8-9 months where Jukes was at my studio like 3 or 4 times a week, and we were working on Jake and the Jukes Man, of course. But then he recorded 140, I think we counted, feature verses at my studio that ended up becoming different things. So the point is Jukes was around a lot. And so a lot of collaborations ended up happening with people running into one another in my lobby. Like back when the studio was in Manhattan, we had an A room and a B room, and there was a lobby in between where people could congregate. And so Jukes was just around. So he ended up jumping on that record, and L had a studio session booked with me one night and walks in the door with Scam. And I met Scam when we were on the It's Alive tour we did in Texas. Scam was on that for a couple dates, and I had met him there. That was all the collabs on the record pretty much were organic, right place, right time kind of things. Whether it was Rusty and Scam, whether it was Innocent, whether it was Sadat, you know, pretty much all the collabs just happened because, you know, people were around and in proximity, and, you know, it just, you know, we just kind of toasted microphones, and but no, all that just kind of happened naturally with people that were around.
That's still, man. Now, one of my favorites is the two of you on Space Lab Guys.
Me too.
That beat, it's funny, like, that beat is one of the few beats in my catalog where it doesn't really change, because I'm always a firm believer in my production that, like, some element of the music needs to change every 4 to 8 bars to keep the song from becoming redundant. But the thing was when I was going through the record looking for samples, and I found that loop, like, I was just mesmerized by it. And the thing was that every time I tried to make changes in the beat, I was like, no, like, this loop is actually just really enough. And so here's a fun fact exclusive that I've not mentioned in any previous interviews. If you listen to Space Lab Gods, right? You know, Elle and I are going back and forth through the whole record. Some of those vocals were recorded in Manhattan in 2015 on a Neumann U87 microphone. And some of those vocals in the song were recorded in 2021 here in the New Space Lab in Brooklyn on a Neumann TLM 103. And I challenge anybody to tell me the difference between the 2015 and the 2021 vocal.
They couldn't even tell.
Because that was the thing where, you know, sometimes you start something and you don't necessarily finish it that day. And we ended up coming back to that one later because there was parts we had to patch back in, you know what I mean? And so one of the things, like, as a studio engineer that I'm proud of, is
and because we vocally had to sound like the first 2 verses,
right?
Because we would, like you said, we had to stop the song because of stuff we were trying to do before we finished it, and like it was like coming back to it, like Cole on the bench playing basketball, and you sit down for a minute, whatever sport you play. Once you sit down and you get back up, you stiff, you cold. It was like, okay, we really had to keep listening to it. And we wrote fresh new bars to make them sound like, and I mean, even to get into the flow of that was in the beginning was kind of hard because we had to put ourselves back in that time frame just to sound like that, get our voice up to the same speed and everything.
Yeah, that's hard to do. Like, going back and doing vocals later on the same song, because so many things from the weather to what you ate or drank that day, like, so many things influence the timbre of your voice. And, you know, to be able to go back and fill in those spaces and make it all match to where it just sounds like one record we did all at the same time is something I'm proud of.
That's dope, man. Now, when I have a old world disorder 12-inch, I think it was probably one of Eminem's first features with Scam on there, and you know, that's when I knew all the artwork that Scam did back then.
Right.
But that brings me back to you, El. We're gonna get some more artwork like this.
Yes, you will. I remember when I did that cover, the black and white picture. I sat there one night. I don't know what it was on my mind, but I sat there and I did Munch and my character first, and I just was like, maybe I don't know what I was maybe going through something, but that's trying to, you know, I usually draw to get some focus sometimes. Yeah, I just, you know, I knew I was doing that record, and I kept listening to the song, and I was like, okay, let me just knock this out. You know, I did T-shirts for it and everything, but my man Forno, he colored it. AV helped me with the layout for that, and that was one of the first covers like that, like a comic cover, and it was after that. Not say everybody had one, but that kind of like, you know,
showing up.
Yeah, it just gave everybody like, oh, let me try that too. I would say Acrobatic had one of the better covers, like something like that. Loot Pack had one, you know, but it just was, for me, something I wanted to do because I didn't have no money to take no pictures. And I just was like, let me draw some and actually show people that I can actually draw like this. And I did, it worked. And I remember when I took the record to Ruckus for them to listen to, I didn't play frontline to them, I played the B-side.
Mm-hmm.
And they liked it, but then he was like, yo, we about to do Medina Green, Mos Def, Ali. I was like, cool. So later on, I took the record to Fat Beats, and they liked it. And my man Matt Fingers put the record out. I met him at Tower Records when the record came out, and he told me, like, yo, somebody gonna be here waiting for you when you come. But he wouldn't tell me who it was. I get up to a block away from him. I'm on Broadway. I see him and standing with this dude, and it's the guy from Ruckus. And he got the record in his hand, same record. He got the same front line. He's just staring at it, all before I walked up, because he didn't see me coming. But he's just staring at it. And then he looked at me when he looked up. Oh, hey, why didn't you tell me that you had this song? Like, you know, just like, which one? The one with Munch in him? I said, you know what? Because I knew you would have liked that one. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to play that for you, and you gave me the deal because of that. You granted me a meeting for me to talk about myself. I knew that record would get your attention, but I wanted to play the B-side first. So he was like highly disappointed that I didn't play him that song. And when he gave me the big speech afterwards, I was like, well, you know, I understand this was my first record getting out of my group as far as Artifacts, so I didn't know what to expect even going to the meeting. I never did that before. With me and Thane, we got our record deal off being on Stretch and Bobito. So I never did no meetings with no labels like that. And when I had that meeting with him, that was it. I was not doing that ever no more. But nope. I'd rather just put the record out. I'm not going back to nobody's office. You know, so that was a wrap. So like, but he was really like, yo, you should have told me, bro. Like, no. You see what I think I did good by myself. Like, I made more money on my own, and I ain't need the stress of, you know, working with them.
Yeah, that's great, man.
Yeah.
Now, with the importance of putting out music on your own, this question is for both of y'all. Tell us how important it is, not just now in music and in hip hop, but continue throughout the years.
Well, what I learned throughout my years of, you know, starting a solo career in '99 with that, 98 with that record you just put up, pretty much got me to all my, you know, single deals, whatever other singles I put out, and up to just traveling back and forth. You know, I never knew any of that was going to happen, but I knew that it was going to be a climb for independent records at the time, because all these people would, you know, that's whether Ruckus, whether through Major League, whether through Stone's Throw, there was a lot of different Traffic, Land Speed, all these different labels was coming, where it was, you were able to like branch out. And I learned a lot about what I, up to this point now, that even with a record deal, you know, you still have to do a lot of this stuff on your own, and do a lot of your own promotion. You know, it's so much more than just putting out the record, but that was always the hardest part, was getting a deal. So, you know, you have options for yourself, working with different labels. You don't have to be tied down to one. And that's pretty much for me. Throughout my 2000s, I was like a NBA like player on a 10-day contract with different teams, like all through the year.
For me, like, putting out music independently is all I've ever known. For a couple reasons. Like, you know, from an early age, I used to, like on my lunch breaks at work, like I would go to the bookstore and I would just loiter in the bookstore reading these books about the music business, and, you know, every magazine I could get my hands on. And from an early age, like, I never really had any kind of delusion that a major label was going to sign me out of Johnson City, Tennessee. So, like, from the very get-go, I had seen the blueprint of, the DIY independent label and how it worked, both in hip hop and even in punk rock, like where they would press their own merch and book their own shows and like do the whole DIY thing. So like I knew that was possible and that was a blueprint that, you didn't have to exist inside that system to apply. That's all I've really ever known. Like I pressed up my first CD in 2004 and have kind of continued from there. And now, I've had digital distribution as far back as 2007. Oddly enough, I used to date a girl that worked at TuneCore back when TuneCore was a little 8-person office in Dumbo, Brooklyn. It keeps going back to Dumbo, Brooklyn. But back when TuneCore was a little company that had, 15 or 20 clients, Space Lab Recordings was one of them. So I understood the importance of trying to utilize the internet from as far back as we were able to utilize the internet. And, that's why I'm back into MySpace. It's so weird because like the MySpace days were so fruitful. I used to do more touring back then in the MySpace days when less people knew who I was and my music was not as polished as it is now. But, it was a more wide field back then. But I'm saying that to say that the whole notion of, I don't have any horror stories of like getting jerked around by labels or my demo getting rejected or anything like that. Because I've always taken the do for self route. And at the very least, like I can control all of that. And if there's a failure, then guess what? It's my fault. It's not because somebody else did something dishonest and, I was on the receiving end of that. But from the very get-go, I found it was important to find your audience, nurture that audience, turn those fans into super fans. And then, if you have a few thousand of those, you can maintain and sustain off of that. And so like right now, it's just about trying to take this snowball, for me at least, like it's about trying to take this snowball that has already been accrued and roll that snowball downhill so that, it can finally be a big snowball. If that analogy makes any sense. But, with the way the music industry is now, like literally no one is being discovered and put on based on the quality of their music anymore. Like for 99.9% of people, like that dream is dead. So, the music ended, but the good thing is that, with this destroy and rebuild aspect of the music industry where everybody kind of has their own lemonade, I call it the lemonade stand theory, where every artist has got their little lemonade stand that they set up and you can come direct to us and get the product. And if you've ever seen El Sensei's lemonade stand, it's very advanced. But my point is that, by having your own audience that comes directly to you, like you can't be blackballed, you can't be shitted on, you can't be shunned. Like by connecting directly to your audience that genuinely cares about what you're doing, it matters not what the music industry's perception of you is, as long as you're reaching the people that actually engage with your content and care about it. So, even when I eventually, in 2017, we did eventually sign a distro deal with Soul Spasm, and, they kind of became our parent label, but it's still a joint venture. Like I'm still having to do all the regular jobs of a label. I just have a big brother label that's helping out a little bit. But at the end of the day, if the music industry does not care about me, like that doesn't matter if I'm able to reach my own audience. And that's what I tell any artist that's coming up right now. Like, you're really probably wasting your time chasing down A&Rs and labels and things like that, because, you could be building your own relationship and rapport. And like that, those numbers might be smaller, but it's so much more secure. Yeah. Because you have a much better projection of what you're going to do each album. You know what I mean? So, for me, the straight to fan independent life is all I've really ever known. I'm just trying to do it bigger and better and better than we did before.
Dope, man. Now, one last question about the album. What's your favorite tracks?
I would say Rule and Rock. Like I had a couple of them, but I would say that one. For me, if I had to sum up the whole record and the whole that one song, pretty much energy wise, and just that's the most straight up forward song. Like that sound like somebody getting yoked up and put up against the wall and just shook mad times until they. I like it.
Geez. They've all got their own reason for being special for different reasons. If you held a gun to my head right now, I would probably say I agree with Al that I would say Rule and Rock might be the best one-off representative of the album. Like if we were going to put in a time capsule, a representative of solving cases, Rule and Rock's probably your best foot forward. My personal favorite might be Bring It In Loud. Like it might actually be Bring It In Loud.
Yeah.
But it's Wednesday, and I could have a different answer. Like it could change with the wind. Like it just depends on my mood.
Yeah, I think mine's still Win, Lose, or Draw.
Okay.
Thank you, man. That's dope.
Yeah, that day, I always tell Jake, we remind him, like, remember how I felt when I wrote that? He like, what's wrong with you? I was like, I don't know. Let's go. I blacked out, especially because I only did one verse that day, and then I came back. And I guess if the studio was crowded, it was a lot of stuff going on. Mm-hmm. And I knocked it out, and then I bounced. And then I came back later and did the second verse. And I was a little bit more controlled on the second verse that I hear, even when I'm saying it. It was a little bit harder as far as what I wrote, but it was to the point, and it was honest.
And you just had a album release show about a week and a half ago at the Mercury Lounge.
So yeah, which was good. That was good of you. Right now we're gonna shoot more videos. We're gonna start planning some shows. As far as after this holiday season, it's a little different doing shows now because you got to show your card at the door and everything like that. Mm-hmm. We all know everybody, not kind of ready for that. So we are really just starting to build on the record and just, still get the word out that is out. And it's still early in the game, and we still got a lot more work to do and just, early stages, but y'all going to know. We're gonna do a video for every song, damn near. So we're gonna push this record out.
A lot more videos. And yeah, that's the other thing too, is like a lot of times albums get abandoned prematurely nowadays, because we live in this fast food consumption next type of culture that, a lot of times, people don't really get to understand the full scope of the album. And back in the day, that's why they would drop 4 or 5 singles off a record, because, there's a thing in marketing called the rule of 7s, where it's like you have to see something 7 times just for it to register, hey, I'm familiar with that. So a lot of times albums get abandoned prematurely before you've really, been able to maximize their reach. So we're going to do more videos. I'm going to actually crank out a few remixes of some of this stuff. And, we're not abandoning, solving cases is not going away anytime soon. Like, we're not abandoning this after a couple weeks. The CD pre-orders are available now. You can go to the Space Lab Bandcamp page. The link is in my Instagram bio. If anybody want to go there, but as soon as the CDs are back from the pressing plant, they'll be shipping probably around the end of October. Like, luckily with CDs, we don't have the same problems we got with trying to press vinyl right now, but we are debating, doing a vinyl pressing of the album if there's enough interest in it. As everybody knows, pressing vinyl is a nightmare right now. So, we're debating it, but if the interest is there, we will do it.
Nice. Yeah, I recall not too long ago, I was on one of the interviews, I was saying how albums used to come out first and then they used to release singles.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a while to register with, which is funny because like I'm starting to see radio shows like, you know, I'm every day I'm scouring the internet trying to see where we're getting traffic at and where all this stuff is coming from and looking for trends. And you know, I'm getting tagged in posts as recently as yesterday with certain radio stations just now picking up Blast Off. And that's a thing that I think a lot of people lose sight of sometimes, is that a lot of these records that we think are hits out of nowhere are songs that have been worked regionally, you know, over and over again for sometimes a year or more. You know, whether you know, a good example of that would be what was the Thrift Shop song? Like, you know, when that finally hit national radar, that song was almost 2 years old and it went through a cycle. So I'm saying that to say that we've kind of had a juggling act with the content that we put out thus far, in where, like, you know, say the audio for Blast Off hits Spotify right when we send the second single, Bring It In Loud, to the DJs. And then when the music video for Blast Off hits, then the Bring It In Loud audio is ready to hit Spotify. So to try to satisfy the people who need constant content, we've tried to set up a little bit of a juggle system where there's always something new coming to them, even if it's webisodes. You know, because we did weekly webisodes every week on YouTube leading up to the album release. But I'm saying that to say, the reason we're doing that is because a lot of that marketing takes time to reach hold. And so, you know, Blast Off is 90 days old at this point or more. And we've done put out Bring It In Loud and Rule and Rock. So like, we're already on our third single, but there's radio stations that are just now starting to pick up our first single. So that's the point, is that's why you can't stop pedaling the bicycle, because a lot of times it takes much more than just posting it on social media and hoping for the best. You know what I mean? Like, it takes repeated shots on goal. We're 3 singles deep, and, you know, finally people who weren't already tuned in to my world or El the Sensei's world are now picking up our first single. So, you know, to any artist that might be listening to this, you know, don't abandon your project right away. You know, I mean, it does take months, if not, you know, longer. So
That's ill, man. El the Sensei and Jake Palumbo. I appreciate y'all taking the time out.
No, here, man. Appreciate you too.
Everyone,
thank you very much.
Man, it was dope speaking, man.
Word up.
Everyone needs to go check out that new album, Solving Cases.
Yeah, right now today is on everything streaming, like everywhere. So y'all go pick that up, man. We thank y'all for getting it when you do.
I just put the link in the comments for everyone. Go check that out. Dope. And always check out the merch that El the Sensei continues to have wherever he's at.
Right, I'm hit me on Instagram. You hit me on Facebook, but you hit me on Instagram and see me at your local record store. I'll be in Boston this weekend in your ear records. And yep, see, you got his shirt too, y'all. Come see me.
Definitely. And for those that need that work, engineering, production, go hit up Jake Palumbo.
Mm-hmm. Even if you're not in New York, like, I mean, you know, if you just need your music mastered, you can send it from literally anywhere. I just need your files and your phone number.
Definitely. So let the people know where they can contact you and where they can continue to support the music.
Well, you can hit me up on Instagram, Sensei from NJ, SENSEI from NJ. You can hit me anything music, versus merch, whatever, show bookings, you can hit me up on there.
You can go to jakepalumbo.com, and I'm on all social media at Jake Palumbo, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. And yeah, same thing. Hit me up if you need to book me. Versus, beats, mix and mastering, life coaching, whatever, man.
Definitely. And on behalf of our entire HHDG media group, which consists of myself, Wiki, T. Smith, Rock Vader KB, the Mayor, and my man Skelly Top, we're going to say peace.
Peace, y'all.
Peace.
All right.